should say that, again, to all the veterans out there, whether you're listening to this recording or you're here with me live, thank you for serving the country. This day and every day, I am so thankful. So thank you to everybody. All right, let's see what we have going today. First of all, I guess it's always good to find out, can anybody hear me? Maybe, maybe not. I had mic problems yesterday. Okay, thank you. You know what? I have my thank you. I think it was Brittany and James, Iman. I think I couldn't see it quite fast enough.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, Javier, your mic is on, and my speakers are muted. So let me get that corrected right now. All right.
Professor, I have a question, if you mind.
Sure,
If you don't
go
mind.
ahead.
I thought I did some testing yesterday, a lot more tests to see if I can get it hatching to work, and I found out that some of my people, okay, one, the file, PK3 assignment 3, that three, if for some reason I can do other PDF or other and another assignment that had all the past assignment from PK2 and PK1, and I can do PDF that include a lot of hatching. They can do fine, except for that one assignment.
Well, it sounds like there might be something. Either it's the additional hatching, which I sent you an email back on that. I took a look at your DWG file, and it may be the amount of hatching that you have in there. Yes, Nicole, I'll get that taken care of. Sorry about that. Either the amount of hatching that you have in there, or it's something in the file. So I sent you an email back regarding that, and then it also could be the draw order, because I did some experimenting on your file and I did some draw order commands on it, and I was able to correct it in the PDF. So you might take a look at draw order. It's going to be a little, I don't want to say not intense, but a little labor effort on it, because you're going to have to select everything and keep doing a draw order on it, and then experiment and see if the PDF doesn't come out right. So it's one of two things. It's either the amount of hatching that's in that file, or there's something wrong with that file. So draw order might be the solution for that.
I look into it, the two of those, the hatching. I didn't move on the hatching to see if it make a difference, but then didn't make a difference. But I'll try to do a draw order. I'll try to do a draw order.
All right, perfect. We'll work together on it. We'll get through it. No problem. Yeah. And so, Iman, yeah, that should be corrected right now. So, you weren't hearing things, Iman. I was hearing it too, but I think it was in the background of Javier, I think. Yeah, okay. I don't hear it now. So, all right, Javier, thanks for that. Hopefully that will work out for you. So while we're on the subject of questions, anything else out there? Responded back to a few emails at some difficulties. There were some difficulties and made some suggestions on that. So try those things. Let me know if that doesn't work. You can always send me your file and with the questions on there, and I can take a look at the DWG and see if I can figure it out from there. But most things we should be able to figure out here online, since you are advanced students and know AutoCAD. With the fundamentals of AutoCAD and a little more of that, actually, we should be able to work it out online. But Javier's problem, yeah, I had to take a look at the file and see what was going on there. It didn't look like anything on my end, as far as what I could see, was corrupt. But with his experimenting, there might be something corrupt in that file I didn't pick up on. I tried the draw order right away, made a PDF, and that seemed to work on the items I selected. I just did it on a couple, excuse me, on a couple items. So draw order is at the very least a little touchy, because you send it back on thing and it messes something else up. So you have to kind of fine tune a certain area and then move on to another area. So draw order is helpful with hatching. It is helpful. All right, so I don't see any other questions popping up here. So we'll go ahead and get into today's lesson. Try to finish up this PowerPoint that we've been working on for the last few days. I do have another PowerPoint that's loaded in here, and truthfully, I don't know how many PowerPoints on the second one. Let me see here if I can find that real quick and just kind of see a time frame that we're looking at here. That was interesting. I just had a crazy morning this morning again. I thought the week was going to calm down, but it just completely went south. Let me see. For some reason, it doesn't want to open. Let's see here. Maybe that is it. Okay, there's 15 in the other one as well. So we have our work cut out for us today, but I don't want to take all the time as usual and leave you at least an hour, maybe an hour plus for drafting time. All right, so as we're working through these projects, we're talking about this week about irrigation. And let me get to the correct file that we're on so we don't go back through the previous 6 or 7 that were on here. Let's see. Don't make this easy. They don't number them in the download. They don't want to number these, so let me find it here so I don't have to go all the way through here. Maybe I will anyway. All right, I don't see it in my selection list. I don't know why. Oh, that's why. There we go. All right. And I think we watched a video on this one, design a sprinkler system. It was a 20-minute video of basically giving you a lot of information, mathematics, whole thing. I just wanted to expose you to what is involved in that. All right. There, as you can see, there's a lot involved just preparing even before you put the shovel in the ground or the trencher in the ground. A lot of preparation and figuring out on sprinkler systems. And so with that said, I'm not going to test you on every little item on the mathematics on that, but some general terminology will be on the test, midterm and final, regarding sprinklers, just so you're aware of things, some of the terminology and process of setting up, and some of the terms that we covered as far as the different types of heads, etc. So as we move on to the next topic on the same slide, it's called City Slicker Water, how to find PSI and GPM, gallons per minute. PSI is pounds per square inch, and GPM is gallons per minute. You might want to make a notation of that if you don't have that memorized. And that's to be able to get your calculations completed that we saw in the first video. So this is just information here. I'm going to let you take a look at these. I don't think they're all videos. I believe there are some charts on some of these as well. So, so calculate water pressure, how to find the PSI and GPM again of your pump water. If you have a well system, there's a lot of well systems out here as well. All right, let me come over to James Meek. Yeah, he says you better have it memorized in the son of an engineer. Yeah, exactly. So Larry says, so we don't have to do the math. No, you won't have to do any calculations, Larry. Everybody else will, but you won't have to, Larry. I'm just kidding. No calculations. Just know some terminology. We're not going to have to know the distances. If I give you volume and then I give you a specific type of sprinkler head, you're not going to have to know how far out or what the range is on that throw on the sprinkler head. So no calculations on that, just terminology basically on the testing coming up Monday, and then for the final exam. Water meter, let's see, let's back up here a little bit. Number 2, selecting your equipment, select the sprinkler equipment. Pressure loss is key to selecting the size, and that's the piping, the supply, the water pressure. This all ties into um, selecting the correct system. A water meter. Water meters have, in I believe out here as well. I'm trying to think back encounters with the city, or looking up some items for the city that we live in. I believe backflow preventers are required. Again, what they are is to prevent any irrigation water getting back into the house water. All right, and back here it says, do you savor the flavor of dog pee? Nope, I don't think so. So you want to make sure you have a backflow preventer on there. So there's another term: water meter backflow preventer, GPM, PSI. Main lines. So we know the main lines from the second slide in the series was the supply line coming in from the street and then leaving the water meter from there. So in most cities, the homeowner, I'm sorry, let me back up. In most cities, the city is responsible from the main, which runs down the street, either down one side of the street or down the center of the street, depending on how it's set up. And then there are trunks or branches that come off from that main, and they hit the water meter for each lot. The city is responsible, in most cities, the city is responsible from the main in the street, the lateral that goes to the water meter, and the water meter itself for any problems. Everything after the water meter, the homeowner is responsible. So case in point, there is a parkway. We have a parkway, a narrow strip of grass between the street and the sidewalk, and our water meter is in there, and we share a water meter box with one of the neighbors to the east of us. And I was out there mowing the yard one day and noticed there was water every time I stepped on the lid of the water meter box, and I noticed water would come up. But I thought, well, maybe we had a lot of rain, a few weeks back, and right there is where the water drains between the houses. And I thought, well, maybe that's it. Well, after a few weeks of this, and we hit some hot weather, there was still water coming out of that box. So I was like, great. Who has the water leak, right? Is it the neighbor or is it us? So I popped it off there and popped the caps on the water meter, and the neighbor's water meter was going as fast as I could see it, just cranking. And nobody was home. So I thought, well, must be their side, I'm thinking at that point. So I called the city out for a couple, I put in 2 requests. One was because there was a water leak, and one was because it was a hazard for mosquitoes, because it was somewhat stagnant there. So they got out here really quick. I mean, I think I put it in on the evening, and they were out here by 10 o'clock the next day. And they determined, well, they didn't, I had to call back because the guys out there, I was in class with you guys, I think it was class, and I didn't get a chance to talk to them. But anyway, I called back to the city, and they said the report was that they replaced a gasket on the city side, but there was a leak on the other side of the valve, and they notified the homeowner. Okay, all great, everything's good. Well, a couple weeks go by and we still got water out there, and so I caught the homeowner out there, and I said, "Did the city tell you have a water leak?" And he goes, "No." So anyway, um, that is their responsibility. He's going to have to get that fixed. Yeah, Larry says water is money. You're absolutely right, Larry. And the price, I believe the price of water, cubic foot of water, and that's how they measure it when they bill you, is like cubic feet. Um, I believe that's gone up. I haven't done a price comparison. I'm not sure they have it on the bill per cubic foot, or you have to break it down or call the city. They give you the volume that you use, but they don't give you the price per cubic foot. But I believe that's gone up because we are maintaining about the same usage. And some months a little higher, but the average is about the same, and the bill is up higher. I would say $10 on the average higher through the season, through the summer season. So I think it's gotten more expensive. So you're absolutely right. And if you need to test for a water leak in your house or in the irrigation system, turn everything off in the house. Make sure everything is turned off. You can even turn off the valves inside your house, um, sinks and things like that, and then go to your water meter and pop it open. And if it's still running ever so slowly, the water is seeping out somewhere, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but over time, as Larry points out, it will add up to an added expense. All right, so main lines, elevation also can create um, pressure loss as well if you're going uphill as such. Steep hills, and a small incline won't be any big deal. Sprinkler heads, how to select the best sprinkler head for your needs. We saw some of that in the very first video, but there's more information for you on that. Laterals we talked about. So coming off the mains are what we term as laterals, and they will supply the actual heads themselves. Um, Types of sprinkler risers. So we talked about pop-up sprinklers. We talked about rotary sprinklers, impact sprinklers. So the risers that actually feed that come off the line for that. If you get it wrong, your yard look like Yellowstone. The guys are shooting water in the air, and that's not always the case. I've had a couple. There's one area that's just a problem area. The fitting on it um, the fitting on it's too shallow. So I don't know if the lawnmower is hitting it or what, but it doesn't shoot up like a geyser, but it will squirt out. And I noticed dirt runoff in this one area down the side of the drive area. So I know I have a very small leak on one of the zones. Don't forget about zone setting. That was addressed in the very first video. So zones could be possibly, maybe sometimes once in a while on a test, asking about what are zones in regards to sprinkler settings. James Meek says, for final project, if there an underground system, will irrigation be necessary? Taking in reality, not just for the project. So let me back up here. For final project, is there an underground stream? If there is an underground stream, will irrigation be necessary? Great question. Usually underground streams are pretty deep, so they're not going to facilitate um, grasses with the roots aren't that deep, and some of the shrubbery is not that deep. Of course, annuals, perennials, the root system doesn't go that deep. Oak trees, they'll go deep and they'll find that stream. If the stream is shallow, you may have some other issues, and that's not with plants. That may have to do with your house. So yes, a irrigation system is still required for the final project. Everybody has to design one, whether you're putting in if you intend to put one in, of course you can go through the design process. You don't have to do everything right now that was in the first video, but the minimum for what we're talking about for our final project, you have to do that, whether you have one already existing or if you have an underground stream, you have to put in a irrigation system. All right. Adjustments, making sure pressure loss adjustments. Um, and James says he thought so. Okay. Doesn't hurt to ask, right, James? Absolutely. Larry is asking, is a 2-foot slope over 50 feet incline small? Yes, 2 feet. Well, 50 feet, 2 feet, that's pretty hefty, but I don't think it would require any kind of pumping system. Usually you might experience some pressure loss there, Larry, but I don't think it will be significant. Usually, if you doubled that rise, which would be 4 feet over 50 feet, yeah, then you might have some serious issues, depending on what the city pressure is. That gets all the way back, finding out what the city pressure is. So, but 2 feet over 50, you shouldn't experience any serious pressure loss. 60 psi coming off the city. Um, yeah, you probably would have to almost do the calculations, but just from my background, um, I would say that you should not experience it. Now, let me throw one caveat in that. If you had the sprinklers going, and it doesn't matter how many on the zone, so just say one zone was going, uh, somebody was running uh, water for dishes, the dishwasher was going, the washing machine was going, and somebody's getting ready to take a shower, you might experience a pressure loss there, significant pressure loss on your um, irrigation system. And what the funny thing is, or I don't know if it's funny or not, but usually the pressure loss on the irrigation system will be the last place that you're going to receive uh, the significant pressure loss. It's the person all the way in the back of the house that's taking the shower that may not experience a huge pressure loss. So, and that can be overcome with a pumping system put in place, which is a little pricey. So you have to determine, how much pressure are you losing? What's the chances of everything that I just mentioned running at the same time? Um, I run our sprinkler system at 4 a.m. 2 days a week and different times for different stations depending. But usually we're crashed out at 4 a.m. or if I'm up, I'm the only one and I'm not taking a shower at 4 a.m. James Meek says, run your irrigation during the times where other water usages would be at the minimum would help. Yeah, like 4 a.m. in the morning and we get back, and I've mentioned this too about there's some issues, some thoughts when to run your sprinkler system. So is it um, in the evening after sun goes down and after the earth is all baked out here in Texas. That's one school of thought because you don't want to get any fungus in the grass. So you don't want to run it in the middle of the night at midnight or something like that. So there's a lot of school of thought on it. I have in California we had some concern about that depending where we were living. We had lived and don't get the wrong idea here. We lived a little bit closer to the beach area in our condo that we had initially, um, and I had to kind of watch that because we had a lot more moist air. We weren't that close. Don't think I had money or anything, but we were a little closer. Then when we moved to inland a lot more, we were probably about 50 minutes from the beach there on a good day. I didn't worry so much about any kind of fungus. Moving out to Texas, I'm telling you, I've watered at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., saturated the ground, and by morning in the summertime, you can barely tell that the sprinklers, other than the droplets on the top of the grass, the soil is probably already dry, especially if we have wind. Um, and James Meek says, I'm trying to figure that out because most of my plants have low water usage. Yeah. Um, so great point, James. So on that, um, most newer timers, you can set different type of watering cycles. So you can set one watering cycle, say for your lawn area, to come on at a certain time, obviously certain duration for the zones. Then you can set another watering cycle that comes on a different time, and maybe it has 0 on the lawn area, and then the time, whatever time you want it to come on for the plants, and the duration is different with the different zones. So there's ways to accomplish that, and especially with technology getting higher and higher on the um, timing system, it gets easier to facilitate these different situations. So you have to kind of play with it. You have to do some research. Um, and this whole thing about landscaping, guys, whether you're interested in it or not, um, if you just you like looking at plants, but you don't want to know any more about it, you just like looking at them. Well, you always want plants not just to survive, and a lot of times in Texas, that's what they're doing is surviving, but you want them to thrive. And so James Meek brings up a point about the watering system. Um, you have to do some research if you want them to thrive. I have plants that are just surviving because I haven't fine tuned it. I haven't fine tuned the watering, the soil, the exposure. There's a lot of things you have to do to fine tune for the plant and make sure the plant's in the right place for the exposure it's getting. This whole thing. So there's a lot of fine tuning to get things to thrive and just instead of survive. And also, that's a great philosophy for our lives. We don't want to just survive; we want to thrive. Um, and so James is saying most of the plants they need minimum water. Some are native. So yeah, you can just put them on that separate zone, and during the summertime, maybe it's just watering once a week at, I'm just throwing a number out, James. You'd have to do some research on it, but once a week for 3 minutes. Maybe that would be adequate in the summertime. In the wintertime, you may not have to water but once a month. So, um, it just depends on the plant and the, again, amount of pressure and volume that you're delivering to the plants. All right, so make sure adjustments, make sure the pressure loss adjustments to balance the system. Um, it does a lot of this. I know it sounds boring, but it is important if you are designing a system. Um, Going back to Larry, just put a comment in. My 2-foot slope is a natural drip system. So the natural slope, Larry, is that a turf area or is that a planting area that you have the drip system in? Oh, the slope is. Oh, I see the slope. Oh, turf to planting area. All right. Um, so it's a natural drip system because of the slope on there. Yeah, but that's being dependent on rain, right? I think that's what you're talking about. So the water naturally runs downhill and feeds the water. So there's a lot of things to be said on that. Yeah, so you have to depend on the rain. Um, and then you get into soil, Larry, and anybody else is interested in that, you get into soil. Because what happens is if you have mostly clay, it's going to compact, and that water is going to run on a slope, will run straight off. And the same with a black gumbo soil, it's going to run straight off, that James Meek says. So you have to do a thing, you have to prep the soil correctly to make the rainwater, even the rainwater soak in. You have to cultivate around to make it like a trough area, which should be done depending on the plants. Like roses, they like to, depending on the rose, but most of them like to be watered not often, but when they are watered, they like to be soaked real heavily. So you need to retain it. Larry, you're on a slope. If you had something like that, the water running downhill, if you don't have a catch area for that individual plant or plants, that water is just going to bypass it with clay type or gumbo type soil. So you have to prepare the soil, and then also there's a thing called aeration, and you can do that for lawns. We're on a slight slope here, and I need to aerate our lawn because I have to adjust the sprinkler system so it comes on. I do a pre-water that's about 2 minutes. Um, yeah, about 2 minutes per lawn area, and about 1 minute for. Um, well, let me kick that up. In the summertime, about 3 minutes pre-water, and about 2 minutes, and that's in the lawn, and 2 minutes in the planter areas. And then when the main cycle comes on, it's a lot longer. But what I'm trying to do is get that water to actually soak in. So I don't want runoff initially. So I do a pre, and then another short one after that. So it gives the soil time to soak it in instead of just running off. But with that said, aeration is basically poking holes in the lawn so the water will gravitate down into the root system of the lawn area. And you can do the same thing with bedding plants. You can do aeration in there that will help the penetration on that. If you want to know more about aeration, I don't want to get deep into it, but there is a machine. I have a poor man's aerator, and basically it's a pitchfork. I've had that for years, and then my wife actually found one that is a manual aerator. Basically, it's like a shovel, but it has, instead of the spade on it, it has 2 points coming down on it, and it actually pokes and pulls out a plug in the ground. Does a pretty darn good job. I use that often as well. I don't use it often enough, but I find the areas that seem to be really impacted in using that. The aerating machine you can rent. I think they're going like $40 to $50 for the day. I think something like that. The reason I don't do that because I'm old and I have a truck, and you have to. A lot of places don't have them on trailers because they're small enough machine, and so they'll help you lift it on there. But then I can lift it down, maybe. I don't know. It's been a while, but lifting it back up by myself, can't do that because it's a pretty heavy machine. But it has spikes on it that will actually pull plugs out. They also have a machine that is aeration machine, but also has a seed bed in it. So if you want to reseed your lawn, if you have a fescue lawn, St. Augustine's are not a fescue. They are um, a stolon, which is basically a root runner, and you can't plant it in seed. So if you have a fescue like a bluegrass or a rye that's for the winter, a winter rye, you can run this aerator through there, and it has a compartment to put the seed in. So as it plugs a hole, then it drops seed grass into the hole. It's a pretty cool system as well. And I said I wouldn't get much into this. I have a lot more information if you want more on aeration and times to do it and stuff. So um, I can get more into that, but I need to keep moving on. Larry says, let me back up to James says, my mom's roses don't care about water. They've turned into monsters. Okay, so they're picking up probably some good ground moisture water and with the rain, probably, James. And so that's helping them go crazy. Be careful of the Rosetta disease. We lost 3 roses, probably more than that, 3 or 4 rose bushes in the back. My wife just pulled out because of Rosetta disease that's destroying. They destroyed that disease destroyed all the rose bushes down in the Fort Worth Botanical Gardens. Larry says I've got a pitchfork left over from my horse owning days. Okay, there you go, Larry. Just drive it in the ground, wiggle it back and forth, go to the next spot, and do it about 1 square foot. We'll get about 2 or 3 rows um, of holes in there. Labor intensive, but it's a way to spend the afternoon, I guess. James says, don't know if they could reach the peak layer, which is down about 4 feet. Yeah, they're picking up moisture from somewhere because roses do need water. Um, and like I said, not frequent, but when they get it, they like to be soaked. So I'm not sure what's going on there, James. All right, some good comments. Thank you guys for that. All right, so we figured out sprinkler head locations again on the throw, on the pattern. Um, there's a lot of school of thought. New technology is getting better on the efficiency of different heads, so you have to research that as well. Creating zones again, drawing the pipes and identifying the hydrozones to create the valve zones. All right, so lawn areas, and as the first video said, so is that lawn area in shade? Does it get a evening exposure like our back lawn does? Um, in certain areas, it gets just cooked in the summer because we get that westerly sun setting down for hours on there. before we get any shade on there. So we have a different zone for that in the back. Our one side yard to the east, it can turn into a mud pile if I'm not careful. And I'm actually correcting that now. I'm putting gravel in that area, and we've had some drainage issues there. So zoning is important. Getting the heads in the right location. Remember, the triangular setup is more efficient than the box or rectangle setup. Lateral pipes. Identify how the laterals are going to come off the mains. So here's a whole bunch of information in determining pipe size and a spreadsheet with that as well. And this is just all for you, for your information. Like I said, I've talked about the things and terminology and things that could possibly, maybe sometimes once in a while, be on a midterm or a final exam. So focus on that the most. This again is for your information if you're actually laying this out or want more information on irrigation layout. All right, so landscape irrigation design and landscape irrigation, and let me see what's going on with that one. I have that open, doggone it. Let's see here. Hold on one second. That's slide number 12. Let me see what's that, and let's see what this has in store. It is a YouTube, and I'm not gonna. That is, yeah, some different additional information on it, so I won't get into that. But it's there for you to watch. Some of these are a little bit lengthy, 20, 25 minutes. So I'm going to allow you to watch that at your leisure if you want more information. All right, but we've covered in this first slide presentation, we've covered the bulk of what you need to know about the irrigation system. We have another presentation, and we're still doing okay on time, so I'm going to go ahead and go into that now. And if you have any questions on irrigation or anything else that you want to put in the chat box, go right ahead while I switch over here. I'll get there eventually. All right. So we'll talk a little more about irrigation plans, but we'll also talk about the 7 sprinkler system irrigation mistakes you may see in your yard. So this is for existing, if you're going to revamp the irrigation system. All right. With that said, we're going to be talking a little bit about water and conservation on that, which is really important on irrigation system. I'm sure most of you, if you ever go out for a walk or a drive and you see an irrigation system on, especially commercial, and it's just rained, you're going like, what the heck is that all about? Or it's raining and what the heck is that all about? There are ways, and people are not, when I say people, I don't necessarily mean individuals. It also can refer to companies, maintenance companies, property management companies that are not taking responsibility in water um, conservation, which is an irritant to me, but off that subject, okay? So the first thing is, how deep are you going to put the pipes? How deep are the trenches? Now, obviously, it's not a home irrigation system, but it is an irrigation system. So the reason the question comes in is because there is an efficient level depending on the system you're putting in to run the piping system. Different sprinkler heads operate at the same time in the same zone. That's another mistake. So you have the lawn coming on the same time as maybe a bubble system or a plant, a system, a drip system watering plants. Can be another problem. Here we've gone over this already, but the different types of heads available for the different types of areas that you may encounter in your design process. Different heads run for the same amount of time, causing flooding. So if your lawn area in the front needs 5 minutes of water twice a week, and the back needs say 10 minutes of water twice a week, and you have them on the same zone, you're going to have an issue in one area that doesn't need as much. I almost, to some degree, almost wish I had this problem here, because you could set up a good aeration system or aerate this area and really benefit from something like this. You wouldn't have this pooling and adjusting the sprinkler runtime, but you would have also a very green lawn here. The only danger and hazard, as you can see, this elevation here is a lot higher than here. I've seen that in quite a few places. Don't understand how they got away with building a house like that, because that's just asking for water entry here if it's not accommodated for. I can't quite see if this is it looks like an older style house, a little bit older. So they may have a pier and beam, which will facilitate that. And it looks like there may be some steps up, so the flooding problem wouldn't be as serious. You still could stand a chance of water sitting against the house, which can cause some issues as well. All right, so different sprinkler heads run for the same amount of time. Did I just say that? All right, I just said that. For some reason, I'm repeating it. I guess it's just showing you another situation here. Again, determining the zones and setting up through your timer system. Again, more advanced systems can be done from your PC, and as well taking into consideration Wi-Fi, not only for your PC but for your phone. And then, of course, there's detection on moisture in the air. Plants and shrubs water together with grass. So if you have different requirements, of course, this would not happen to anybody. But there's an example of burning up grass or dead grass. So you can create your own problems by having a very efficient system but not using it correctly. Overspray, that's a huge issue. I fight that all the time as conscious I am of it. I'm adjusting these heads. You have a whole bunch of variables, right? You have the type of head. You have how far they spray out. Pattern, of course, something like this should be half pattern, but then you have the other variable. What is the saturation point of the lawn? Are you running it too long? So now we have runoff here. The other thing is overspray. So that's what this addresses here. So the overspray, is that caused by a bad sprinkler head, or is that caused by wind? We have a lot of variables that go into it. It's very tough to fight like this, fight a problem like this. That's why I had introduced the idea of drip system irrigation in the lawn area. And I think I have, not in this presentation, but maybe in another one, maybe it's this one, on drip system that they introduced into the lawn area. It is expensive to do, and basically you want to do a new lawn. You can put it in an existing lawn, but it usually tears the heck out of the lawn. And so, you might want to consider something like that if you're going to replace a lawn. All right. So overwatering. This is just, crazy. I mean, you have a small piece of grass here or ground cover. So how the heck do you get that watered other than overspraying. Let me back up one, and there is a slight solution to something like this. This sidewalk is very typical, and this is not a picture of my house, but this is typical, somewhat typical. Our parkway area is not this wide. Okay, it's probably something like something like this here, up in this area. But what I have done, sidewalk is sloped like this. So when I water this area, I know I'm going to get water over here. So what I have done, I've done a couple things. When I run the trim line for the grass, I've actually created a little bit of a trench along here just by trimming. So the grass is trimmed back, and now I go down deeper with my trim line and create a little bit of ditch here and on this side. Actually, I've done it on all sides. So now the water will come down, go into the ditch, and it will have a better chance of saturating in there. It gets a chance of it, and then if it overflows, it'll pick up this ditch here and try to retain some of that overspray on that. So just one of the theories I try to use to solve this type of issue. All right, sprinkling when sprinkler still running when the rain or after a lot of rain has stopped. Like I said, I see that a lot in commercial. I see it some in residential. Please, if you're watching this and you have zero interest in landscaping, but you own a house and has a sprinkler system, or you're thinking about putting one in, please take this into consideration. There's a lot of tools now that are a lot less expensive than when I was first in the landscape business that can help you with things like this. Again, a moisture detector will help the system shut down, projecting water, or projecting possible rain. Also, there's these advanced systems that tie into satellites, and they can tell that they have a storm come through. They'll shut down the system. You don't have to remember. I'm at fault too. I try to be conscious of the weather, and I'll turn off the system if I remember to do it. But there are some times, and fortunately, usually they haven't come on while it's raining. It's usually the after or before. They'll come on, like I said, at 4 in the evening maybe, and then that afternoon we get more rain. So now I've wasted the rainwater to some degree, just because now the ground is wet enough and it's running off. So be aware of it, please, please. And I'm not the sprinkler police around here, and I've never spoken to anybody about it. But when our HOA is watering the park that's behind us, um, and those go on, and it's raining, or they're going on right after a storm, I just have to question. There has to be some better technology. That's one of the things I wouldn't mind involved in the HOA and some of the things and practices that they have going on with the landscaping. So another side, I'm getting off the soapbox there. Move on. All right, so make sure you're laying out a plan that will facilitate all the needs that you have around your uh, house. Uh, Make sure before you dig, check for electrical and for cables and for gas. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. I always forget it because I'm so used to calling what I called in California. It's called Dig Alert. So what was a 1-800 number? You call them, they get out within 24 hours, mark up the spot. Um, they have a company out here that does the same thing as well. So make sure if you're putting in a irrigation system, don't assume that you're clear of that they ran the electrical deep enough. It's supposed to be 18 inches water, I think 24 gases at 24. I forgot the requirements on that, but they don't always put them in like that. I used to not work for, but I volunteered for a city. This was when I was in high school. A city that I was going to high school in had a program that you could volunteer for the city department of inspection. And I would ride around with this guy who was an inspector. And especially on new homes, they don't inspect every single new home. In California, they do what we call a build out. They build the entire first phase before they're even sold. They'll build out the whole phase, and the inspector does not have time to go through all 100 houses to inspect for drywall, for example. But they'll check the nailing pattern on the drywall for 4 or 5 houses, make sure that contractor is doing it correctly. They can't always catch if the contractor didn't run the electrical deep enough or the gas deep enough. So be aware of it. I have been on site as a surveyor when somebody hit a gas line. We weren't locating the gas line; it wasn't our fault. But so the guy was on a tractor bigger than the one pictured in the top right up here. He was on a tractor and something like this was hit. And instead of jumping off like this guy did correctly, he starts backing up the truck. And we're like screaming at him, shut it off and get out of there. And so things that can like that can happen in a flash. I used to have small equipment for my landscaping company like this and a small Kubota and stuff. So they can do some serious damage in a heartbeat. So please make sure you call that before you dig. All right, finishing off just about on time. Any questions on that? That will conclude our irrigation presentation over the last 3 days. A little bit drawn out, a lot of information, but hopefully you've extracted what you needed. And also these resources are here for you if you want to go back and review it or extract more information if you're doing a project at your house or if you're helping somebody with a project. All right, so next week we will be moving into, if I can talk, let me get some water here. We'll be moving into codes and standards. That will be week 5. And then week 6, we'll probably do cost estimates and project specifications, something within that. With project specifications, we may have to bump up because that involves detail sheets as well as required for both of our projects. All right, everybody doing all right? Still awake? James Meek says, oh, does the irrigation system have to be the whole yard or can it be limited to an area? The entire front yard has to be irrigated to some degree. So that was a great statement, James, because here's the deal. And let's just say, and I know, James, you had mentioned you would like to do this, but affordability and everything, so you're planning for that. But here's the deal, and this is what I've run into in this house. So you lay out a landscape plan, you do it, and everything is great for 5 years or 6 years or whatever. And then through time period, that 5 or 6 years, you may change out some plants that have different watering requirements. So you have to adjust the drip system or the spray system or the bubbler system. But the main thing is you have water to it. Let's go another few years into it and you decide, you know what, I want minimal landscaping. I'm taking out the planter beds where you have the drip system in, and you're going to put all lawn area. You're going to yank out the planter beds, for example, which is to me low maintenance. So you don't have to deal with it. You just mow and edge and blow, and you're done. So at least you have water to that area that you can now plumb for irrigation for that future or for that projected lawn system or lawn ground cover. So it's always good to have irrigation in places, even if you don't intend to use it. That's called, planning ahead on that. And maybe it's not even for you, James, or anybody else. Maybe you decide to sell and move, but at least the next person will know. They should know by you can stake it out for them, or have a riser that's just capped off if you're not using that. But at least they know they have water. If they change things up, then they don't have to go through a lot of labor to redesign or reconfigure the irrigation system. So yes, James, back to your question. Yes, everything should be irrigated. Everything, even if you're capping it off or have minimal water going to it. Everything that you plan on your landscape front yard project and rotunda need to have an irrigation system to it. With that said, if an area, I can't think of an example right now, but let's say you're running a planter bed and that line, you stop it at the end of the planter bed, but I can't even think of a scenario, but you need irrigation maybe for future around the corner. You want to make note of that. Run your line around and make a note that it is capped off for future use or something like that. You guys, on all your plans, please make some detailed notes on what's going on. Are you removing trees? Are you putting new trees in? The uh, type of walkway. Is it is it gravel? What type? Is it crushed gravel? Is it a number two gravel? Do a little research to know these materials. That's part of the class. All right. So put some detailed notes. Don't just put tree or 10-foot diameter tree. You know, find out what type it is. At worst case, I probably shouldn't even say this, but at worst case, uh, just guess at what type of tree it is. You have here these plans may not be for you. This class may not be for you, but you're stuck in it. What I meant was these plans may not be for your use. Uh, you may be handing them off to somebody, or a plan that you draw up, whether it's landscaping or manufacturing or architecture. You want to be as detailed because when you hand this over, you don't know if you're handing it over to somebody that knows the project already, is familiar with everything, and has an idea in their head what it, or somebody who has no idea about the industry, no idea about the project, and you're introducing it to them. The great scenario is the guy who you sit down, the client you sit down with lunch, and he is an accountant. He knows nothing about architecture, and he scribbles on a napkin, I want 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, uh, 2-car garage, 2,000 square feet, and I like ranch style. That's all he knows about. And he hands you the napkin. So the rest is up to you, but when you do the preliminaries on that and bring it back to him, you have to have detailed information that the siding is flagstone siding or used brick. The walkway is a crushed gravel with flagstone or whatever it is, so he can see it. The presentation, the cover sheet is going to give, without the notes, is going to give him the feel for the look, the color, the texture. But as you get into the site plan, as you get into the actual floor plan of that project, you're going to have detailed notes. You're not going to just say carpet or hardwood floors. You're going to tell them what type of floor, what type of hardwood floors. Um, is it a high grade vinyl flooring? That looks like wood? Is it a pine, a soft pine wood that's now been treated to protect it? You have to get these details down, and that I want you to do. And I know it's going to get a little bit cluttered up, but you have lots of room on a D sheet in your title block for notes, along with the SWOT information. You have your page with you can use leader lines, you can use legends. There's all types of ways to keep clarity to your drawings. So please add detail to all your drawings, and not just this class, but everything moving forward. Add details. When you guys go to work for somebody, they're going to have a standard of what you have to have on every single sheet. And maybe it won't be as much as that I'm teaching you about details. You're going to like, well, I think we should be calling this out. They're going to have a standard and say, no, we don't need to because of X. Or maybe they won't even explain it to you. They'll just say, no, we just need this, this, and this as far as details. But get used to looking at sheets, projects in detail. Um, I feel just by, and this is not any kind of bragging or anything, but I feel by just my nature, I look at things in details. And this is probably a weak example. It doesn't have anything to do with drafting, but it has to do with landscaping. When I maintain my yard, um, you're probably going to think I'm crazy, but I mow it and I edge it and I edge around the trees. Well, I also have outdoor lighting. Well, I can't edge completely around the tree because of the outdoor lighting. So I get what I can with my trimmer, but I go back with some hand shears and I trim the little grasses growing up between the light and the tree. Um, these are little details, or if I stand back and look at the yard, I see a branch that's just kind of not right. I'll trim it back. We have this what we call a lollipop tree, and which I'd like to get rid of. But anyway, a lollipop tree, and if it starts getting like my hair just kind of sprouting up everywhere. Well, not a lot of it, but it's kind of sporadic like my hair. I'll go and I'll take the hedge trimmer to it because these are details I feel make a better impression on, or makes me feel better on how I want my yard to look. Not that I care what the neighbors, they care what the neighbors think, and I'm sure I do to a certain degree, but what the neighborhood looks like. But these kind of details are important to me, and they should be important to you, not in landscaping necessarily, but on plans that you're working on, things that you're approaching in life, projects that you're approaching. Look at the details in this. Drill down when you have meetings or you're encountering with a client or something. Drill down on the details as much as you can. So I'll get off that soapbox there. Let's see, James. And James says he's constantly updating his old drawings because he probably sees more details in that he needs to cover. This is another thing, James, and I hope I'm going down the right road on that. When you guys work on projects and you have deadlines, and I've said this before, when it comes to Monday deadlines, turn in what you have. I mean, you're going to have to release it at some point. And back to James's point, when we get to our final project, and let's say you've completed it 5 days prior, for example, and you constantly go, oh man, I got to change that. And you go back and you change that, and you look at it again and go, oh man, that doesn't look. At some point, you're going to have to let a project go, whether it's this class or you're drafting for somebody for a business. You might constantly see things you want to change, manipulate to look better, but at some point, you're going to have to let that go. Now, if it's blatantly wrong or needs to be corrected, they'll send it back and for you to correct that one or two or three things. Don't start combing through that entire drawing because at every point, you know, is there 100% correct drawing? It depends who's looking at it. It gets really objective. That's why we try to have the set amount of information on every drawing that's required on there. And you can put in additional information in this class, but that adds to the clarity of things. So make sure you know that you're going to at some point have to release that drawing, whether in business or in this class or any other future classes. All right. Any other comments or questions? We're going to take a break here and come back in a little bit. Anything else? All right, I guess not. So 1:35. Let's take a break till 1:45, and we'll be back 1:45. I'm going to step out and get something more to drink here, and we'll go into our next lecture. See you in a few.